Hey guys, before we dive into today's episode, I want to take a moment to offer a trigger warning. In this episode, the guest will be sharing his personal journey, including a past experience he had with suicidal ideation. It's around the middle of the episode. I understand that this topic may be sensitive or triggering for some of the listeners. So if you feel it could be harmful to your mental well-being, please take care of yourself first and foremost, and consider skipping that portion of the show or this episode in its entirety. And if you're struggling with mental health issues or experiencing thoughts of self-harm, please know that you're not alone. There is help available, and reaching out is a brave and important step. You deserve support and care, and there are people who want to help you through this difficult time. But without any further ado, here's the episode.
I remember my dad was like going to take a nap or something, and I woke him up. I said, "Hey man, there's something going on with my car, man. I need you to come outside." He's a real big car dude, so he like fussing and putting his shoes on. I needed a reason for him to come downstairs, so the entire family's together. So he's fussing, he's putting on his shoes. He's like, "Man, this dude, man, didn't I tell you get your oil changed? You don't listen, Donnie, whatever." And then when he's putting on his shoes, I told him, I was like, "Hey," I said, "Pops, I got the job. I'm going to the NBA." Man, Pops broke down. He just started running around the crib and was like, "Thank you, Jesus," crying. "Thank you, Jesus," walking around the crib, running. And he just kept saying, "My son's going to the NBA." And it was like something out of a movie. My sister ran and jumped in my arms. I'm like, "Girl, you grown. What you doing jumping in my arms like that?" Mama just jumping and screaming, her jaw on the floor. But those moments are like etched in my mind. Like, man, it means so much for them to see me succeed. It's like this belief that, okay, my parents did this and built it out like this. I'm gonna take that baton and give it to my kid.
Welcome to Pinnacle Code, where we spotlight excellence in the culture. I am your host, Ben Arthur. Excited to be joined by my guy, James Boyd. He is the Indianapolis Colts beat reporter for The Athletic. Does a terrific job in Indy covering the Colts. He's definitely one of the main people with inside information on that beat. And, it's really cool because he's one of the guys who's uh, kind of transitioned to the NFL from the NBA side. Like me, he loves basketball. He was covering the Indiana Pacers for the Indianapolis Star in Indianapolis. So he's kind of done coverage of two major sports leagues, and he's just honestly a genuinely good dude, good heart. Loves to play ball. Like I said, we've played once or twice and had some good run. But James, thank you so much for joining the show. How's everything going?
It's going good, man. Thanks for having me. You hit it right on the head with loving to play. I just played yesterday, about 6 games, and
Yeah.
I was like, man,
Okay.
yeah. I'm in this private run now where it's only about 17 guys. So if you lose, you might sit one game and you're right back on. And so
Okay.
I might have overdid a little bit yesterday because I was feeling it today, but
Yeah.
it's like the good kind of sore, and it kind of just made me feel uh young again. I was like, man,
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm old, I'm 28, but it just made me feel like a kid again, going out there playing,
Yeah.
competing, not thinking about anything else. So that's fun. But other than that, man, just appreciate the intro. Obviously, it's been a hell of a journey so far. Blessed with every opportunity that I've gotten so far, and just excited to continue to stack days.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And let's kind of discuss that journey. I know you're from Romeoville, Illinois. That's a place I'd never heard of until I met you, if I'm being
Yeah.
100% honest. I think a lot of the people listening probably don't even know where that is either. So I guess what do people, first of all, like, can you kind of break down like the landscape of Romeoville? I think that uh, do would help a lot of the people listening.
Yeah, so I guess I'll start with my Twitter name, social media name on pretty much every platform is Romeoville Kid. And I made it that way, I want to say when I was in college, because it was like a joke at first because Romeoville is about 45 minutes southwest of Chicago, southwest suburb. And a lot of people from where I'm from, who I went to elementary school with, middle school with, high school with, a lot of them now like to say they're from Chicago. No, you are not. You are not from Chicago. You did not grow up in Chicago. It makes them sound tougher or cooler. You're from the big city. No, you're not. And I would be less territorial about this kind of stuff if Chicago wasn't such a big city. But I'm like, Chicago is a huge city. So and honestly, I have a lot of feeling from Chicago. And those who are from Chicago usually say what neighborhood they're from rather than saying I'm from Chicago. I'm from Bronzeville, I'm from Chatham, I'm from West Side, East Side, whatever. So that's kind of where the name started. But Romeoville itself, it was also a pride thing where both my parents grew up in inner city Chicago. They didn't want to raise me in that environment.
Mhm.
They gave me a nice suburban life in Romeoville. So
Mhm.
I didn't want to be this fake person. Like I didn't grow up with
Yeah.
the struggle, had my own room, always had, nice stuff. So I had a very good life my parents worked very hard for. So I always felt like I should just take pride in where I'm from. And so Romeoville was a pretty diverse suburb. It wasn't one of those things where it was a lot of black people, a lot of white people. It was pretty diverse. We had a lot of everybody in my
Mm.
high school and in my upbringing, which made me have a large demographic of friends whenever I go back home or go to a different party or somebody, got a new apartment or something like that. I'll see people from different races, ethnicities, and things like that. So it was a good living to me and a good upbringing. We're one of the smaller suburbs in that area, so we would always get crushed in all the sports because we were the
Mm.
smallest school. And I didn't understand class sizes until I started covering high school sports. And so that's when it clicked for me. I was like, oh, no wonder we never beat like Bolingbrook, for example, because they have 3,000 more kids than us. So of course they can find 12 of them that are good at basketball. And so it didn't make it feel any better that we would lose to them all the time, but it made sense to me. And I was like, okay, now I get it. But other than being, I guess, one of the smaller suburbs, it was a typical American suburb, nothing too crazy.
Mhm.
And I would say honestly, I probably had everything short of the white picket fence out front. It was a nice neighborhood, good neighborhood. My parents are still living there. My sister still lives there as well.
Mhm.
But yeah, not from Chicago. And anybody who tells you they're from Chicago and then they say something like Arlington Heights or Romeoville or Joliet, no. Like if you have to get on the expressway to get to Chicago, you are not from there at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, no, I love that you're kinda making that delineation 'cause I almost feel like you're calling me out in a way 'cause, I'm not from that area at all, but I always tell people, like, I'm from Seattle, which is technically right, like, I was born there, but I spent most of my time, like, in the suburbs, and so, like, I've just spent a lot of time outside of Washington State, so it's just become habit for me,
Yeah,
but,
no.
like
To clarify, it's not necessarily like if I see you and we're at the NFL Combine or something like that, somebody, "Where you from?" I'll tell them, "Hey, I'm from Chicago area or from Chicago," whatever. That's
Yeah.
fine. It's the
Yeah.
people that I actually grew up with
Yeah.
who I know are still in this same area, and I'm like,
Yeah.
no, that area code you have is not Chicago. Like, stop doing that. Like,
Yeah.
brother, I went to the same school as you for 12 years of my life. You are
Yeah.
not from that place you are claiming now just
Yeah.
because you went to a few blocks that you saw in a rap video. No, you are not from
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
That's
No,
my
that
gripe.
yeah. No, I love it. No, I like the honesty and yeah, just repping, like, truly where you're from. I think that's super important. And, but specifically with Romeoville, like, what do people maybe need to understand about that suburb to what do people need to know about it to, like, understand who you are today? Like, how did it shape you as a person that we know you as now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that in hindsight, it shaped me a lot more than I ever thought it would. I would say I had a lot of great people in my life. And I guess that's the case for everybody most of the time, or you would hope that's the case. But I had, great coaches, great teachers who told me that I could be something from anywhere. And so, you hear that enough at home, which my parents and my sister were great about that. They kind of gave me this irrational belief ever since I was young. And it was validated within reason whenever I was in classrooms on a basketball court, running track my senior year of high school, different things. There was this belief that, hey, you can actually be something. And so now it's not necessarily that I'm doing all these things. It's the response I get from back home. The
Mm.
Facebook friends that I'm only on Facebook for so they can see my life and they can tell me, oh, like, I remember when you were in this class and I was teaching you this, or I remember when you were this age or whatever. It's validating that belief that they gave me. And so I wouldn't say that Romeoville is particularly unique. Like there's not
Mhm.
like this restaurant you have to go to or this place you have to go to. We only had one high school, Romeoville High School. But I would say there are a lot of relationships that I built back then when I was, probably from 10 all the way till being 28 now that I still have. And whenever I go back home, I might try to catch a game. Usually the way it works is somebody's little brother or somebody's, son or daughter at this point, not my friends, but like my teachers, they have kids who might be growing up now. They're still at the school. And so I'll stop by and catch a game. And it's really an opportunity to kind of, let them know I haven't forgot about where I come from, who I am. And then also realizing the platform I have now. So when you're the
Yeah.
young, black dude who has the cool job, who worked in the NBA, worked in the NFL, has covered WNBA games as well. When you tell, a group of kids that, and you have me come speak to them at an event or whatever, that usually catches their attention much more than like, hey, I went off to become a banker or I went off to become an accountant. Like those are great professions, and
Yeah.
I'm sure you make money and you're successful, but you tell a kid you met LeBron James and their ears perk up. And
Exactly.
so I try to make sure that I just show them as much as they believed in me, told me I could do it. Now I'm gonna come back and like validate it and show these other kids like, hey, it is tangible. I'm here in the flesh telling you, everywhere you've ever dreamed of going, if you want to do what I do, or if you want to do something else, I can tell you, hey, I've been around the world now, covering this sport and covering sports and living my dream, and it is possible. And so I get a lot of love and appreciation and fulfillment out of those things, probably more than anything else, because I just want people to know like it's possible to make it from literally anywhere.
Yeah.
Which is another reason why I try to rep Romeoville as much as I can, is because you can try to claim a city to make it seem like you're cooler or tougher, but it's like for me, I'm like, I always thought I was cool. I always thought I was, capable
Yeah.
of doing these things. Not in an arrogant way, but it's just like, who cares where you're from if you know where you like trying to get to? And so to me, it's more about the destination than like the origin of wherever you tried to, wherever it started.
Yeah, kinda going off that, James, like, it sounds like you have, like, this confidence in you, and it sounds like your parents and your sister did a good job of, like, reaffirming that. But was it always natural for you to be so confident, or was that something you had to learn and really try to embody at a deep level?
Yeah, probably the latter. I had to learn
Yeah.
it, I think. And that's why I'm super close with my family. I think it's weird to some people, and it probably is, but I talk to my parents like every other day. My sister probably every 2 days, my grandma as well every 2 days. So, we have a rule though that I call them, they don't call me, because it's like I might be in the middle of a press
Mm,
conference, I might be on a flight, I might be in a
I
game,
see.
like, I can't have my phone ringing and Shane Steichen is talking, right? But I think, and what I appreciate about my family, especially my parents, and my sister, just being in the same house. My grandma lives in the city, but she's been great too. But those three, my mom, dad, my sister, my twin sister, actually, uh, they made sure that when I was growing up, I was heard, I was validated, I was not made to feel like an outcast. Because sometimes growing up, it wasn't as easy to fit in, and I used to get frustrated with that because I think you know this, but maybe the listeners don't. But I don't drink, don't smoke, never have, never will. I'm not saying it to brag, like it's not a religious thing. It's just that when I was growing up, it just never seemed like something I wanted to try.
Mhm.
And I never wanted to just do something just because everyone else is doing it. But in turn, you get a lot of, oh, he's a nerd, he's a lame, oh, he don't want to do anything, or he thinks he's better than you. It's like, no, I just think that that's not for me. And they were the ones when it was harder to make friends because I went to parties and stuff, but after a while it was like, if I'm not doing what everybody else is doing, why am I here? I'm not enjoying
Yeah.
myself. I don't like seeing people, do things that, you know, uh, I am not interested in. And so it took a while, a long time, I would say, probably maybe until like my senior year of college, I think is when I just said,
Mhm.
after I'm gonna be me. But yeah, I think without their support along the way, I probably would have like lost my cool a lot more, or been a lot more insecure. And I think that they helped me work through a lot of my insecurities when I was younger, so that now um, there's no one who can tell me who I am or who I'm not. And so just realizing that obviously nobody's perfect. You got your flaws, and my mom will remind me of mine all the time. And she's always gonna tell me,
That's what they're there for.
yeah, I'm thinking, dang, I could be batting 900, and she gonna be like, well, you missed this hit, and you could have done this better, or you could do this to be a better, brother, son, significant other, whatever the case may be. And so, I thank them a lot for at least just reaffirming me before I knew who I was really. And so I think a lot of kids can benefit from that. And I think that's why I, again, try to go back to different high schools that either I went to or I covered to speak to the younger generation because maybe you're not hearing it as much as I was. And because I don't think that I would be where I am right now if I hadn't heard that, my life mattered, my dreams mattered, what I wanted to do, being different is actually a good thing. Those things, made me feel good because now, you know how I go, like you have some success in your career, you tell somebody working in the NFL, you tell somebody, in your case, I haven't done this yet, but I will get there. You went to the Super Bowl and covered the Super Bowl. Everybody's gonna cheer for you then, right? Everybody's like, "Oh man, I knew you could do it." No, you didn't. Like you were on the team for me
Bro, back,
5 years ago, and
back.
so that just again, I love my family for that and my close friends for believing in me and telling me, even when I first started writing journalism or getting into journalism that, that I could do it and do it at a high level. And beyond that, just loving me as a person. So um yeah, it's been a big, big journey of like self-reflection, self-love, making sure that I'm taking time for myself, to check in with myself, talking to who I need to talk to, not burying my feelings, things like that. And I think because of that, the confidence and the levity that comes along with that is easier and it's not as forced as it used to be. But yeah, I tell people all the time, my parents, my dad in particular, really all of them, my grandma too. It's like I could tell them, hey, I'm going to the moon tomorrow, and they not gonna even ask how I'm getting there. They're just gonna be like, all right, well, take a picture and send it back when you get there. And so that's always been my thing, and that's why I'm huge on pictures too. Like when I go to games, scouting combine, I got a picture. Some of my friends are like, why are you getting a picture? You gonna cover this next year? You gonna do the same thing? And it's like, man, I got folks back home that just want to see me doing what I said I would do
Mm.
and what they believe that I could do. And so I get a lot of joy out of always being able to at least share a picture or do something like, hey, here's your son, your brother, your grandson doing something that you always believed he could do.
You mentioned, James, that it was, like, in your senior year where you really maybe of college, where you really started to, like, embody just that confidence, that
Yeah.
being reaffirmed by your family and whatnot. What was it about your senior year where it was kinda like, "Just F it, like, Imma just do me, like, I don't care anymore, like,
Yeah.
this is who I am." Like, was there anything in particular about that year?
um, I think it was probably my most selfish year of sort of becoming a man. And it was a good selfishness where I felt like again I was trying to do everything. You go to a Big Ten school. I went to Illinois, and you got 40,000 people, and you can get to the bar when you're 19. You want to experience that or be around it or feel like you're included. But again, I have never had a drink of alcohol in my life. Never smoked anything, and so when I was in these environments, sometimes I remember standing in a bar, maybe my junior year, end of my junior year, and I was like, "What are you doing? Like paying to get into a bar, and you're not even drinking." I'm like, "I'm paying cover to just stand here and mingle with people who are a lot more inebriated than me." And they're having a great time. I'm not judging them for it. Like I have a lot of great friends that drink and have a good time, whatever the case may be. And what I love about my very best friends, even growing up, is that they never forced it on me. They were always just like, "Hey, you're welcome to come. If you don't want to come, we understand that too." And so that
Mhm.
made our relationship a lot stronger. But I would say that moment in my junior year, I was like, man, what am I doing? I'm wasting time. I could just do stuff that I find to be fun. And so my senior year, I quit actually being an RA because I was like, I'm dealing with all these other problems on campus, other people going through stuff. I know, and not to say that selfishly, but it was like I was in it just for the money. And I was like, if I'm not gonna be very passionate about like actually trying to mentor these students because I'm trying to figure out myself,
Yeah.
then I was like, you probably shouldn't be doing it. So I quit that. My parents were cool with it, which again, that's one of those instances where they could have been like, hey, we really need you to keep doing this because it saves this amount of money or whatever. But they were always just like, we want your mental to be straight. And so if you happy, we want your senior year to be as happy and as selfish as you want it to be. And so my senior year, man, I knew I liked, reporting, writing. I loved, sports, obviously. So I just started doing anything that I thought was cool. And I was thinking, I don't care. Anybody in the world think it's cool but me. And so I did a radio show where we covered athletes with disabilities called Rolling Illini, covered wheelchair racing. Illinois has a great history
Mm.
of Paralympic athletics. The GOAT wheelchair racer, Tatiana McFadden, she's like the Michael Phelps, Simone Biles of wheelchair racing. Like she's that good. She's a legend. Got to talk to her, Jean Driscoll, which is like, if Tatiana McFadden's like Michael Jordan, and Jean Driscoll's like Dr. J. Like she came before her and kind of paved the
Okay.
way, sort
Yeah.
of thing. And so interviewing legends like that and doing radio shows, did a TV show on campus with a teacher that I now consider like an extra dad in a sense. Where we were running around campus to different events and doing silly stuff. I remember around Halloween, I dressed up in like this dog costume that somebody brought to class, but like didn't want to wear, and I was like, I'll put it on, and went on TV and actually did like a package for it back in my TV days, and so those things, and also just hooping a lot, refereeing, and then just chasing my dreams, and so I felt like again that to a lot some people that's like man that's boring. All you did was hoop and go to class and carry a camera around or a microphone or do a podcast. Yes, and I loved every second of it. And in hindsight, I wish I would have been more selfish earlier in my college days.
Mm.
Because I was always a good student. And part of it too, though, is making sure that you are getting out of your shell. You don't want to just do the same stuff that you always did your entire life. But it's like once I found my, different lane, my friends who I wanted to actually be around, my experience on that campus was a lot better. Because I remember telling my mom, after my freshman year, I was like, man, like I ain't really have enough fun. Like I was successful, I had got the grades, did everything I was supposed to, but I ain't have fun. I was like, man, like should I transfer? Should I go somewhere else? Like should I just leave the state? And she's just like, you got to decide that, but I just want you to be happy. Like you can go all the way to California, but you got to figure out what you're gonna do when you get there. And so obviously I stayed at Illinois. Money was a factor. But beyond that, it was just figuring out, okay, how do you make the most of your time and your experience because nobody else is gonna be able to do those 4 years for you. And so yeah, man, I enjoyed myself. And I think since then, it was just like I'm full steam ahead with what I want to do, who I am, and then if you love it, if you want to be around for it, great. If you don't, that's cool too. Like no hard feelings. It's just that I'm no longer going to do things that I feel like aren't, beneficial to me. And so that was a hard thing for me to kind of accept. Like it's okay to be selfish and it's
Yeah.
okay to be different and be lame or whatever the case may be. Because hey, man, I've had a great lame, life so far.
No, that's facts. Yeah. Yeah, man. Too many people are acting, like
Man,
being,
I get tired of that.
yeah. I mean, we just got to be ourselves, and it's I think easier said than done in some instances, but just gotta kind of do it because ultimately, like you're gonna look back and be like, man, what was the point of all that? Like, I just gotta,
That's what I'm
be me.
saying. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
But, but James, like for you, like you talked about like having like the radio show in college and really starting to kind of dig your teeth into sports media and whatnot. At what point did you like realize, okay, like I'm good, like I can make like maybe make good money from this? Was it like external validation from
Yeah.
someone? When did that moment come?
Yeah, I would say so I started writing late. I came in as communication major, switched to broadcast journalism. So my degree is actually in like TV and radio and all of that, audio
Mm,
journalism. But took an intro to journalism class my sophomore junior year and loved it. Bugged my teacher every day after class. Shout out to Jennifer Follis for telling me to stop talking to her and go to the student newspaper. And I think from there, it was one accepting the humility of you're not going to be covering football or basketball, which is every person's dream. You walk into a student newspaper. I want to cover football or basketball. And they're like, all right, well, how about men's gymnastics? And I was like, oh Jesus, like how much do you love this? And
yeah.
I was like, you know what? They're right. I have to start somewhere. I have to earn my keep. And I think after I got maybe my first award in college, that's when I knew, okay, like I'm onto something. And actually, it wasn't even a sports story. I wrote a story about one of my best friends in college. Her name was Anna, and she's undocumented. And so she told me about basically her whole life story from being born in Guatemala, moving to I was just reading the story literally like I got a Facebook memory about it maybe like a week ago, and I read the story again. I was like, wow, like
Mm,
this is and then obviously you read the story, you're like, I would have wrote this differently or changed this or whatever. But beyond that, the meat of the story is her journey from being born in Guatemala, moving to the US when she was 6, and really having the US be her only home, the only place she's ever known, and not having the same uh, you know, opportunities or help to get a college education, to, graduate from a higher learning university. And so, um, it started in a place of curiosity because I didn't know a lot about undocumented students, didn't know their struggles. And so she was always very open about hers. And so I asked her, like, "Hey, would you mind that I do a story about you and kind of learn through this process?" And it was great. I ended up talking to her, talked to people at the Spanish house on or the Hispanic house on campus. They had different houses for different ethnicities and things like that.
Mm, mhm.
And wrote this big feature, my first like front page story. I think I might have actually got it framed at the crib back where my parents live, and
Okay.
won an award for it. And I remember thinking like, wow, this is a story that, one, beyond the award, it made me feel good because it felt like I actually said something or wrote something that mattered and had more of a shelf life than, this person scored this many touchdowns in a Tuesday night. I mean, not a Tuesday night, on a Saturday night football game, or this person scored this many points in a basketball. And so from there, it was just trying to chase stories that I felt like, obviously you want to do things that people read or watch. So that kind of dictates, how deep in the weeds you can go, but still having those passion projects on the side. And so my senior year, I finally, worked my way up, got an internship actually with the Associated Press, where I was covering men's basketball and football for them, a little women's basketball as well. However, I was still doing the radio show on the side, and it was forcing me to gain a different perspective on sports and on my life. And I thank my
Mm.
friends for that. Ryan Wilson, who is one of my best friends. He's actually on my Twitter profile. He's in my header. He's in the middle. He's in the chair, and then
Oh,
Will
okay, yeah.
Gerard is the other
Uh-huh.
guy. So yeah, Ryan was he's the most blunt person ever, and he's very like good at making you aware of your privilege as an able-bodied person. And so,
Mm,
as a black man, I was thinking about what privilege you do have. And he would tell me certain things like, if I need help, I'll ask for it. Like, you don't have to you don't have to do everything for me. I'd be around him. I can grab that for you. I can do this. And he's like, no, I'm capable of doing it. My chair will get me there. And
mm,
but occasionally he would like be honest. He'd be like, hey man, like, here's an example. Like, you see how this building is made? Like, you see where we go in at? Like, you see how this ramp isn't as sturdy? Like, so I need you to like to hold this down for me so I can get up here and all these different things. And so I
mm,
learned so much from him and from other people. And I think again, that sort of validated, okay, I'm writing stories that matter. Somebody
mhm,
sees it and notices it. And now it's just about repetition and attacking it each day. And I think having that perspective from Paralympic sports gave me the compassion to cover I guess more able-bodied athletes, and look at them for more than what how many points they scored. And so those are the stories that always validated with me the most, were the ones that were a little bit deeper, a little more about who they were, where they come from, their
yeah,
why do you do this versus
yeah,
how good you do it. And so that kind of steamrolled from there. And like I said, it was just reps, man, reps and irrational belief to the point where you start to get, some recognition no matter where you are. Cause I was always thinking throughout my career, every stop, it wasn't about like, oh, I'm only gonna stay here for this long. It was like I'm gonna come here and crush this to the point where it's undeniable that I am the best at whatever I'm doing. And then the next opportunity will come, and that's just always in my belief. And so,
mm.
not there yet on the Colts beat. We got some sharks over here. I'm trying to make sure I can swim, but yeah, I think college, that first story, and I believe the title was undocumented but not unworthy, and that
Okay.
was yeah, that was my first big story, man. Got it front page on the student newspaper. You couldn't tell me nothing that day. That was a good feeling. That was a good feeling.
Yeah, you were him that day.
Man, I felt like it. I ain't gonna lie to you.
No, facts, facts. No, that's great, and yeah, a lot of what you were saying, like, just resonates with me because I mean, for me, like, getting into this business is about, like, the features, right? Like, getting to know who these people are who are
Yeah.
being play in front of thousands of people, like, what shaped them, like, their psychology,
Mhm.
and that's I mean, the X's and O's are fine, right? But, like, really showing everyone, like, who these people are and connecting with the audience in that way, I think is, in my opinion, the most special part about journalism, or one of them. So,
Mhm.
I love that. And James, for you, like, you're one of the most open and vulnerable people that I know, like in terms of like your usage of social media. Like you're not afraid to like discuss like things you're going through or like certain personal experiences. Like the way you use social media, I think is different from um maybe a lot of our other peers and colleagues. And it's something I admire you for it. You know, I have a lot of respect for kind of your vulnerability with a lot of people that you don't even know and just explaining like this is what's going on with me. Um why has that been, or I should say, like, why are you so open in that way? Like, what has kinda enabled that?
Yeah, I think personally, it started because when you raise and to be a man and you raise in our community, honestly, the black community, you're not always allowed to be vulnerable. You're supposed to, toughen up, don't cry,
Yeah,
be a man and suck it up and tough it out. And I think throughout generations, that's been beneficial because when I look back at like how my dad was raised and his dad and others, sometimes it was we just got to survive, so we don't have time to necessarily dig into why you feel this way or what's going on in your head, right? But now we do. My parents did very well for themselves, and so it there wasn't like this, every day we got to figure out what we gonna eat. It was figuring out who you are, and I think in turn, trying to like emulate what I saw all the time was hard for me because I'm like, man, like, am I soft for like, crying? Am I soft for like actually feeling some type of way about this?
yeah,
And the more I tried to bury my feelings, I felt like the deeper I sunk. I talked about this for the first time a couple years ago, actually, on social media. So October 26, 2014 was the only time in my life I felt like, man, I don't even want to be here. And I didn't know till years later it was like, what they call passive suicide ideation, where you just want to go to sleep, you don't want to wake up. And it was from again, I was in college. Uh, I had some friends at the time that were like, close to me, but they I think a lot of people thought I was gonna change when I got to college and I was just gonna automatically start drinking at some point, right? Like at some point he's
mhm,
gonna stop being this goody two shoes dude. And
yeah,
so I had some friends that basically tried to, I guess, accuse me, or one in particular that was just trying to like accuse me of changing. And I was like, nah, like I was at this party and got a message like, oh, I thought you said you never drink. And I was like, I'm not. And this person in particular, I was so close to, it hurt so bad. I was like, wait a second, like, of all the people in the world, I thought you was gonna be the one to not ever think that I would, change. Then I was also thinking, like, and if I did, what? Y'all been doing all this like since however long, and I ain't never said a word or judged anybody. And so after that, I kind of felt really alone. And I remember going to bed that night, like, oh man, like, man, if the one person or two people that I thought was like gonna have my back, like they ain't got my back, then like why am I even here, bro? Like why do I gotta feel like this? Like why can't I? And it was hard for me to understand was like, why can't I just do what everybody else does and not feel any guilt about it or not feel like I'm following the crowd? Like how come I can't just do what everybody else does
yeah,
and be accepted? Because I don't care what anybody says. It's like be your own person and do your own thing. Like yeah, that's easier said than done. Like everybody wants to be accepted. But I think after that obviously, didn't go through with anything. It was like I said, one of those feeling like you don't want to wake up, but I did. And after that, I was like, man, I can't like go on like this. So I think my mom has been like my unofficial therapist in a way, because she's been the one person, not one person, one of the biggest, probably biggest influence in my life as far as my character, my openness, my vulnerability, because she's probably the strongest person I know, but not in like this macho way.
mhm,
Her thing is like, what do you have to do to make sure that you're okay and that you don't feel like you can't talk, or that sacrifice this toughness act that's gonna catch up with you at some point. And so she's always been my outlet. I can tell my mom pretty much anything under the sun and not feel that judgment. And it's the same way now with my dad, my sister, my grandma. But my mom and my grandma in particular, strongest people I know, women, and they really showed me that like toughness, strength has nothing to do with like manning up. It's being able to really face your fears and say what's going on and using your words to express how you feel. And so From there, man, I think that like it's just made me more open. And I think now that I'm very secure in who I am, how I feel, I know I don't try to hold on to stuff. If I call it hoop
Mhm.
therapy because it's true. I go on hoop because it's good for my mental health.
Yeah.
I talk to my mom and my sister and my dad and my grandma about what's going on in my life because it's good for my mental health to get it out. Like I can't bury it. And even more candidly, when I seen people in my own life um bury their emotions to the point where you you had those moments where you like, man, this person almost wasn't here because of that. Um,
Mhm.
that type of stuff really kind of snapped me out of like, okay, we have to talk as a family, as a village, as friends. Like, we got to talk because if we don't, then I don't want that guilt on myself or anybody around me to be like, oh, we didn't even know this was going on because we didn't ask. And
Yeah.
so I'm constantly the people in my life, whether it's even through social media, it's like make sure that you talk to somebody, get something off your chest, because I really do think that your life is valuable and it's worth living. And I think sometimes it can be hard to see that or have that reaffirmed if you feel like you don't have any outlets or you got to men in particular. Oh, you have to man up and you can't talk and you soft if you do. Like, nah, I think it's strength and vulnerability and being transparent. And sometimes I'm like, man, am I too transparent? But I'm also like, somebody might actually need to hear this. And so it's
Yeah.
not lost on me that you know how it is. Like you have thousands of followers, they follow you for football, but there might be, one or two that actually might need to hear that message in that moment. And so,
Yeah.
not saying that I'm got all the answers, but I think that I would consider myself a mental health advocate and somebody that's definitely for, hey, if you do need medicine, if you do need a psychiatrist, if you do need a therapist, if you do need, certain things, don't be afraid to ask for it because I think that the longer you wait, the longer you suffer. And it's like, nah, man, we got a long life to live, and I want people to be happy and fulfilled while they do it. And so,
Yeah.
it's not linear. Like I'm not happy every day, but I consider myself a perpetual optimist. Like I'm gonna speak something positive about my life until it happens. And then but again, it's also recognizing when things are hard, saying that they're hard. I was having this conversation the other day, like even in reporting. Remember I posted one time, I was like, man, like I hear everybody saying like Zach Kiefer, great reporter. He was on the beat before me, shared the beat for a year, he left. And all I would hear after a while was like, man, Zach did it this way. Zach did it that way. And I tweeted about it one time. And I was like, hey, Zach is one of the best reporters in the country, like probably in the world. Like he'll
Yeah.
never say it because he's too humble, but he's great. But I was just saying, like, I'm trying my best. It's hard. And I got a couple text messages and people checking in on me. I was like, hey man, you okay? And what's going on? And I saw your tweets. And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. But I'm like, can we just normalize it saying that this stuff is hard sometimes? Like,
Yeah.
can we break the fourth wall for once to say,
Yeah.
like, beyond this transaction that I just scooped, that this is hard? This is not an easy business to be in. And I think what adds to maybe sometimes our mental struggles and the weight of it is that we are in the public eye. Everything we write gets scrutinized. And I stand by the fact that some people don't realize what that does to you or what that can do to you if you don't have that outlet. Because yes, it's great to write a story and everyone tells you how great it is, but like as soon as the team doesn't do well, you write that they didn't do well, you get crushed for it. You might get a lot of crazy responses from people, and that can weigh on you if you are not able to know who you are. And so I'm very, very big on not just acknowledging like negative stuff, but acknowledging that hey, this is a hard field that we are in. And I think a lot of
Yeah.
people wouldn't be able to necessarily hold up if their day-to-day jobs are scrutinized on a day-to-day basis. And I get it. I signed up for this. I'm not complaining about it in that sense. I'm just saying that there is some nuance there with how public the job can be. So
For sure.
yeah, man, I enjoy using my voice in that way. And I think that it's good because it's like I always look like, look, if it's come a time where I ain't here no more, at least you know how I felt. Like I don't need nobody
Yeah.
thinking about
Right.
what do you mean by this? Nope. I'm gonna tell you, within reason, because I gotta keep my job on some topics. But when it comes to mental health, I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely gonna be that person that hopefully gives somebody else the idea of opening up and hopefully gives them that comfortability to do so.
What would you tell people who are looking to be more transparent as you've become with the wide variety of topics and whatnot, just in general? What would you tell those people looking to be more of that, like about how to be that, like the steps they can start, because as you said, and as we know, kind of like with the black community, with black men, like
Yeah.
some of the stuff that we hold in, and what it's not easy. Like sometimes it's a lot of people may listen and say, well, it's easier said than done. Like you don't know what I've been through. Like so, like what do you think as someone who's become transparent? What do you think are maybe actionable steps people can take to start becoming more transparent?
Yeah, I think one of them is probably just writing the stuff out, or even if it's just like on your phone. I used to do that a lot when I was younger, before I really started opening up to people around me. But it's like finding some way to get the thoughts out, and I
Mm,
think that usually for me will kind of take the weight off of it. But the bottom line is, man, like nobody's a mind reader, and so even the people in your life who you love to death, they love you, they may not know if you do not say it.
yeah.
And I was fortunate enough to have, a mom who, even now, like when she asks me how I'm doing, she's not asking like, in the, walking down the hallway type of thing. Hey, how you doing? She's like legit asking. And I'm like, oh, I gotta give you a real answer. Let me think about this. And creating that type of space. And so that person could be different for everybody in their life. It could be your coach, it could be your best friend, it could be somebody you work with, but just someone. And I'm not saying you should just go around dumping your trauma on people, but if there are things that are on your mind, make sure that you find at least one person. And I think that one person can usually help you to just get some things off your chest and be a little bit more open. Now, I'm not saying you have to be like me because I do think there's a gift and a curse with it because when you open yourself up,
Hmm.
you open yourself up to people who are not always, as far along in their journey as you.
Yeah, that's
And,
a nice way to put it. Yeah.
yeah, and then just being real, bro, like, not to get too deep, but I've had, like, legit days in my life where, like, life got flipped upside down, literally. And so, and things that I had no control over. And so now when I look at my life, people ask me, "Oh, man, like, why are you, like, happy coming to this, you know, Wednesday practice in the dog days of the season, or like you're happy when you come out to training camp and all that?" Because like, dude, you don't know. Like it's some days where I thought, this would be paradise compared to those. And so because of that, I think that when you're going through stuff, when you have those hard days, when you have those moments, um, every person that I've known, been close to, that didn't talk about it or didn't get it out, it became, if it became inevitable. You can't outrun it.
Hmm.
And so I would just advise anybody out there, man, like if you can't, if you can't talk to somebody, like get it out, and whatever whoever you believe in as well. Like I believe in God, and it's one of those things where I'm like, man, I'm gonna talk to somebody. I'm gonna write something down. I'm gonna get something off my chest. And then also, even if you're not always comfortable talking, because there are some things it's like it's just hard to put the words together. And I understand, like I'm a writer, and so it's easier for me to kind of express myself through words versus other mediums, but it's also finding that positive outlet as well. And so, I don't say it in a joking manner when I say hooping is like a therapy for me. I go play, and for 2 hours, I ain't got nothing else on my mind but just trying to get a bucket and get a stop. And so, you get frustrated within the game because you're a competitor, but it allows me again to get some energy off, take some steam off, not be so stiff, so bottled up, so weight of the world on my shoulders. And I think doing those things repetitively have made me a more open person and just made me a more full person. And then I think when you are that way, it leaves room for you to be a little bit more of a bridge for other people. So,
Mm.
again, I can't be everything for everybody. I tell myself all the time, but you can be a pretty good person for a few people, which is what I try to remind myself as well.
That's good stuff. In terms of your job, James, like covering the NFL now, as I mentioned in the beginning, you used to cover the NBA too. To this point, and I know your career is still unfolding and you're rising and whatnot, but what do you think has been the biggest challenge for you to this point, and what what is maybe getting what has gotten you through that, or what if it's a current thing, like what are you doing to get through that?
Yeah, I think the hardest part of every stage of my career is just that you have to feed the beast with the mock drafts, with the
Yeah,
transactional. I can, tell you that they re-signed this person or per sources, right?
yeah.
Sources drive everything. And I remember reading some stuff back in the day. It's like, back in the 70s and all that, they just said stuff on the record. I'm like, if we go back to that, because now it's like, I don't know who sources.
Everyone gets
Yeah,
an
right.
yeah,
Who sources right and all that type of stuff. And I deal with that on a day-to-day basis, but I think the hard part is, like you said, we resonate, and I think that's why we click. You wanna write the 1,500 word feature every
mhm,
day. You wanna get to know the
mhm,
person and only do, like, feature stories. But the hard part is within that, making sure that you're still covering a beat, in my instance, where it's like to get to the deeper dive stories on Anthony Richardson, on a Zach Moss who just went to Bengals, did a big feature on him and how he grew up last year. Um, it's 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 finding that balance of like, okay, how much do like just football jargon stuff do I have to do versus telling stories that have a shelf life more than a week
yeah,
and the general person can just pick up and read whether they're a sports person or not and feel something from it because I will stand by this 1,000%. The best sports stories usually are when sports like the background or the backdrop of whatever story you're telling. Like it's not the vehicle that you're necessarily using to drive it, but it's like this passenger, in the car that you're telling about this person. And so whenever I've written stories, whenever I've won awards, it's always been about those stories. But you can't tell those stories, at least in my position right now, every day. And so that's the challenge. That's the hardest part about it, man. But it is also the most validating part because it's like, okay, I know by doing the little things day to day, okay, who got signed to the practice squad? Who got let go? Let me go talk to this person, all these different things. It creates relationships. That way, when the time comes to finally tell, a story, a real one, like I like to say, it makes it easier to do so. But
mm,
that's the hardest part, man, is just making sure like I'm writing words that matter.
yeah,
And I've challenged myself and I don't always feel like I'm doing a great job of it and it's hard. And it could be, and I mean, like, I'll stay up some nights and I'm like, "Oh, I gotta figure out like what's a story idea that I can do that's not, you know, a list of potential draft picks or a list of potential free agents or, something that is very clickbaity. What can I do that resonates and matters? And again, at least makes the person I'm writing about or the person reading it feel something. And so, man, like there's other things that's hard, but to me, that's the hardest part. Is like, how do you write words that matter in an industry that is becoming more and more about aggregation,
yeah,
engagement, and driving numbers. It's like I understand that, but like, dang, this story needs to be told too. Like,
yeah,
the hundreds of thousands of people that might click on this mock draft maybe it's only 10,000 that read this feature, but like, man, like they might need to hear this because it's a good story. And so,
exactly.
yeah, man, I'm like, you gotta work with the machine, but it's like pushing back at times to make sure that you actually do the work that you got in it for. And I think do the work that keeps me happy because I gotta do my best work when I am happy and when I feel like it matters that I'm writing it. Because if it's honestly harder for me to write, bro, when I don't care about what I'm writing. And not in the sense of like I'm not informed. Like I'm informed about the Colts and the team, but some stories that I've done, it's like I don't necessarily care as much as
Yeah,
I do with other pieces. And so it's finding that balance because I understand too though, every fan's not gonna read 2,000 words. Some fans just want that stuff. And without them, I wouldn't have a job. So
yeah.
it's making sure that I'm feeding the right crowds, but also feeding myself in a sense where I'm still holding myself to a very high journalistic standard and writing stories that hopefully stand the test of time.
Yeah, I'm maybe I'm wrong about this, but I hope that maybe at some point there's a correction, so to speak, in terms of uh the value of that kind of storytelling we love, right? Because that's, as you said, that's what stands the test of time. It's not such and such is signing a 3-year, $26 million deal
Right.
because within 2 days, like, no one cares
Right.
anymore, right? Like, why do we care so much about that? It's the great stories about these people that is what people gonna that's what we're gonna remember 10, 15, 20 years from now, so I don't
Exactly.
know.
And even if
Yeah,
it's like the why or the how behind the deal. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Like,
exactly. Yeah,
that's
more
even
context.
yeah,
Yeah,
well,
that's
it
better.
doesn't have to be, like, such a personal story. It can be, the behind the scenes look, and I get the funny thing now is every headline everywhere is like, "Inside," whatever, whatever, whatever,
Yeah.
and then they give you the backstory, but I love those types of stories because it's like, okay, for example, Jonathan Taylor last year, there was a
Mhm.
point where we both were texting like, "This dude might not be here." Like, he demanded a trade, and for all those listening, if you're a few Colts fans out there who like, "He came on Zaire's podcast and he said it was all like, brother, I love and respect JT, but anybody who
That's
demands
fair.
a trade doesn't want to be with that team in that moment. Now things can
Yeah.
change.
Mhm.
I like to think that a large bag of money can change a lot of people's minds on a lot of different things. And so obviously they became it came to the point where they were able to uh continue this partnership, this marriage. But I remember right after he requested the trade, the next morning I had this timeline up. It took me all night to write it. Had this timeline up and put it in the athletic, but it was like this timeline of how did we go from, you know, 2021 rushing champ to, you know, 2023, I don't want to be here. And it was like breaking it down, the behind the scenes, every little detail that I had documented over this period of time. And that to me was again something that had a little bit more of a shelf life than, oh, he demanded this trade. It was, oh, this is the backstory. And then also here's the contract stuff. Here's why he even took this stance. And so that to me mattered more than, like you said, writing 500 words. Okay, here's the transaction. Here's his stats from last year. Here's where he came from. And here's what the team looks like with him. Like, okay, yeah, anybody can write that, but can you write the stuff that, again, you can't find just by a simple Google search? That's what I always
Yeah.
try to tell myself. Is like, you can Google stats, you can Google games, you can't Google human beings. You can't
Ooh,
Google like behind the scenes stuff. And so you got to find that stuff on your own and ask good questions and sometimes be annoying. I know Zaire Franklin. A shout out to my guy for yeah, I think he still has it pinned. My feature I did on him on his story, on his Twitter page actually. And I remember I asked him a question one time. He was like, "Man, you know too much," which is like the great kid as a journalist, right? And he trusted
yeah.
me with so much to get that story out there. And again, that's one of those ones you can read it now, when it first came out, versus 10 years from now, and it can still be something that hopefully gives you a feeling of something other than I just read a bunch of stats.
Yeah. No, that's real. And, something I wanted to touch on real quick, James, and I was kinda looking at just some of your old Instagram posts and kinda going back to you just being so open and vulnerable. You talked about in one post, it was probably in summer of last year, where you talked about how you would just kinda sign up for a particular, like, student loan
Oh
repayment plan.
yeah,
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 and, in that post, you kinda talked about, like, now I'm starting to have kinda more conversations with my parents about, like, generational wealth and setting the roots, like, of that foundation and getting to a point to where, like, your future family, whatever, like, doesn't have to think about, like, that kinda struggle or having to take out loans, like,
right.
with money being an issue and, like, why is that I wanted to ask, like, why is that so important to you? Because I think a lot of our colleagues, like, I mean, I think a lot of journalists are just like, "Oh, I'm just gonna be broke," like, whatever, like, you know,
Yeah,
like, I don't like, I'm kinda, like, almost like in your boat, like, I've kinda, like, told my girlfriend that too, like, I don't like, I'm not gonna be broke, like, my future kids are not gonna be struggling. Like, I'm very committed to that. But, like, to hear another person in the journalism industry, like, we know how much issues are in the journalism industry and how low, like, people are getting paid and whatnot. So, but going back to, like, my question, like, why is that, like, so important to you?
good question, man. I think first, as far as the I want to make money, make sure I'm not broke. I'm so serious about that because I look at it like this. I saw the salary cap went up for the NFL. I cover the NFL. I'm thinking it got to be some paper out here for me. It got to be something out here for me. And I'm not saying this from a selfish standpoint. Like I'm very aware that the likelihood of me becoming, you know, a tens of millions of dollars in my bank account, from years from now, it's probably unlikely. But that don't mean I have to struggle either. And
Yeah.
my pastor, I've been going to the same church now virtually since I was born, and my pastor he always talks about money, and he's a doctor, actual medical doctor, and everything like
Mm.
that. Works at, I believe works at Northwestern, so he's made money. He's always talking about how, like, he came from the projects. He's like, man, my God, the one I worship, he ain't saying nothing about being broke. In the Bible, they ain't talking nothing about me. I got to be broke to get to heaven. You can
Yeah.
be rich and get in too. You know what I'm saying? So, um, jokes aside, and again, whatever you believe in, I'm not saying you have to believe in Christianity, whatever. I'm just saying, there's always been this irrational belief that I've had that, you know, if I see this person on TV or I see this person being pretty successful and probably making more money than me, even not necessarily making more money, it's making enough to be okay. Where you can travel, you can save up, you can pay for your kids' school, all these things. Then why can't I do that? And I understand people say, oh, well, the odds of doing this are very slim. Don't care. The odds of me sitting here talking to you about this podcast, 6 years, after I graduated college when I didn't have any career path at all, were very slim. And I always bet on myself anyways. And I felt like, whether it worked out or not, I would get more satisfaction at least going for it. And if it
Mhm.
failed and it was like, oh, I got a degree from the University of Illinois, I'll be able to make some money somewhere. But as far as the journalism field goes, man, it's like I'm not trying to hear nobody tell me that you can't live a certain way or you can't, crack certain barriers or break certain ceilings because I've seen other people do it. Now, is it easy? No. But I don't need it to be easy. I need it to be possible, for me to actually go and do it. And so,
Mhm.
that's probably like the on the surface reason why I'm trying to chase, the bag, so to speak. And like you said, I want to make sure my family is straight. And then also it's seeing the sacrifices that I saw every day. And one of the biggest things that aggravates me about people acting like hard work automatically leads to success is that I've seen hard work my entire life, and I've seen people who worked in my family, hard to goal, pure goal, work their entire lives extremely hard and never get ahead, never get what they deserve. And so, you know, going from my grandma who, didn't even graduate high school, used to pick cotton when she was a kid for like $5 a day, and actually was 250. But if they, mistaken and thought you were like grown up, she told me sometimes they used to be covered up from the sun, that they would mistake them for being older than what they were. So they pay them five for an
Mm.
entire day of picking cotton. She thought that was like a lot of money back then. And so going from my grandma who's just turned 86 to my dad who didn't graduate or didn't go to college. And my mom did, got a master's degree, and she got great grades. So, when I was in school, it was like, boy, I got a 3.8. You got to bring it up, it's kind of way. But seeing him, seeing my grandma, seeing the foundation that they laid before themselves, even without all the resources, they were laying this stuff with the idea of my kid's gonna have better. And so now I feel like I'm in a position where the sacrifices that have been made generations before me have given me things that they never had, opportunities they never had. And so I feel like it would be a disrespectful or disgraceful for me not to chase the dream and not to give everything that I have to be successful because I have been given literally no reason to fail. I don't have a sob story. Had both parents, had a good life growing up. Um, my parents, made sure that I was able to do whatever I pretty much wanted to growing up outside of like traveling a lot. And so now it's about building that next step. And just candidly, like I saw my dad go to work every day and work manual labor every single day of my life. He just retired a few years ago, 2 years ago at this point, I think. But when he retired, one, he was getting close to the end anyways, and he was always like, I'm not gonna make it past 62 doing this type of work. Even though retirement age is, yeah, he's like, man, as soon as I can get anything, I'm probably done.
Yeah.
And when you're young, and my dad used to wear Superman shirts to work, and he used to, go in and get it in, man. Sometimes when I was really young, he used to work a lot. He used to work at a ladder company. And he would be working like, sometimes 13 days straight, getting all this money, right? He's working super, super hard. But as he got older, it got harder to keep up with it. And then when I got older, started getting into my, late teens, early 20s, you see the toll it takes on people you love to work extremely hard just to give you a chance they never had. And so I remember being in school and it's like, man, people were like, man, you gonna study tonight? You gonna do this tonight? And you gonna, why you working so much? And why you doing this? Why you doing that? It's like, man, I got people back home that sacrificed way too much for me to be here. And then seeing my dad like just being real, like the work that he was doing broke him, like, eventually, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's physically fine and mentally fine now, but if he had kept doing it, I'm not sure that his quality of life would be what it is. I'm
Mhm,
not sure that he would have a good back, you know what I'm saying, or a good arm, like,
mhm,
be able to, like, actually live. And so seeing that every day, it was like, man, I gotta get out here and get something, I gotta take this further than what he had. And so, we talk about it all the time. He's always telling me, like, man, I didn't do all this, you know, just for you to just go out here and be mediocre. I believed in you. I told you you can do it. I gave you every opportunity. Just talking to my parents about how, like, it's my dream and I'm hoping I can do it to like pay off all the debt that they put themselves in for me and my sister. But even if it isn't, he's like, man, I don't even care. Like, if I die and the debt is with me, I'm glad that you are in a position where you can probably get yourself out of debt and make sure your kids are never in it. But he's always telling me, like, man, somebody had to bite the bullet. Somebody had to see past their environment, and I give him a lot of credit, my mom as well. It's because, like, when you grow up in an environment and you don't see a lot of success all the time, or you don't see what you want, it's hard to dream that way. But they dreamed
mhm.
anyways. I don't know too many people that came from the hood and can say they, got their own house built together. And so seeing them do those things together, it just gives me motivation to obviously do that for myself. And then when I have a significant other, do that with them as well. But yeah, man, I'll never forget like them days seeing my dad like just getting emotional thinking about it. Like, man, my dad put everything into like trying to make sure I was straight growing up. My sister was straight. And so being in this position to where I'm at now, it's crazy. And I'll tell you this story too. I'm talking a lot, but I'm just being real.
Yo, keep
Uh
going, man. You're good.
so right around the time my dad was, he's getting close to retirement. I had won an award, my first ever only APSC, or actually I take that back. I got two of them, but my first and only first place award for APSC. Won the award, and I had been saving up money. I had just moved out to go cover Illinois athletics. So I was living in Champaign at the time, and I couldn't about the house maybe about a few months, but I won this award, and I've been stacking my money up since college. And just because my parents used to make fun of me because I used to have W-2s from everywhere. I worked in the dining hall. I was an RA. I refereed.
Mm,
I love refereeing the different tournaments. Some of the tournaments they paid you in cash, so I was like, this ain't even taxable. So I was stacking it up. And so then I continued even after I bought my car after college. My first big purchase, investment in myself. I was still like, I'm still to this day like that, where I'm always stacking and saving and saving and saving. But I won this award, and the award ceremony was in Vegas, and my dad's a huge Raiders fan. And so I just called him one time and I was like, hey man, like I need you to take some days off. And he's like, man, for what? I'm like, I got this award and we going to Vegas. And he like, for real? I'm like, yeah. And it was the first time in my life where I could actually do something for him. Like I just told him, hey man, like I don't need nothing from you, but just you. Like just pack your bags and we going. And we went for a few days. And it's funny because I met Lisa Wilson there, who hired me basically,
mm.
or helped put a good word in for me at the athletic. But she met my dad, and she's like my auntie at this point. Lisa always gonna keep me in line. Shout out to Lisa. But
Shout out Lisa.
we
Love her.
went to yeah, great person. So we went to Vegas, accepted the award. But what he didn't know until I finally told him, I told him, hey, we're going to Vegas, accept this award. And then I just started looking like he's a huge Raiders fan. They had just built the stadium, the Allegiant Stadium, and they hadn't even played in it yet. And they were doing tours. And so I got us 2 tickets for the tours. And when I had to call him back maybe like a day later. Like, hey man, I need you to like actually take off one more day so we can go early. Like, for what? I'm like, we going to see the stadium. And he just was like over the moon, like over the moon. And it was one of the proudest moments of my life because for like 3 days, man, like all we did was just swipe the card. Like we weren't worried about anything. We ate wherever we wanted to. We stayed in
Yeah.
this nice hotel. We went to the event, obviously, to accept the award, and had our dress clothes on for like literally 2 hours of this event, and right back into shorts and walking the strip. And he had my dad, he had hardly been on a plane before, and so taking him there and taking pictures of him and his Raider stuff and touring the stadium and seeing the Lombardi trophies that they had and going to the locker room, all these different things that we did. He tells me to this day it's the best gift he ever got. And it just means so much to me because I'm like, man, this dude worked so hard. And I finally got to like give it back a little bit and he loved it. And so he and my family is my motivation just to do right and do and succeed. And so that moment, that trip, I wrote about it actually in The Athletic. Because the day that we were there, I told him, I said, man, next time they took us up to the press box and into the media area as well, like where you go and cover things. And I remember telling him, I said, hey man, like next time I'm here, and also they were under like some kind of construction, so they didn't have the grass out, they didn't have the field. It was just like this construction. They're getting ready for a concert, I think. But you can see everything else throughout the stadium. But I told him, I said, hey man, like, and I grabbed my public dead in his face, and I was like, dude, the next time I come here, I ain't paying. Like somebody else is paying for me to come, I'm gonna be working. It's gonna be grass on this field, I'm gonna be working. And somebody else paying for me to come here. And you fast forward, get the Colts job. And this
Mm.
this is how crazy it is. Like this was before I even worked for the Pacers. I was still doing college stuff. Got the Pacers job, got the Colts job, and then my first season with the Colts, who did they play? The Raiders in Las Vegas.
Mm.
And so I think
Full
it was
circle.
something crazy like 466 days after I went that first time, I was back again working. And I remember and he told me like that day that we were there together, I was like, hey man, like I'm gonna get here for real. And most people will be like, oh yeah, you might do it. Yeah, okay. My pops was like, no, I think you are gonna do it. You're gonna do it. He's like, all I ask you take a picture when you here, get a picture with the grass. And so I did. And I sent it back to him, and that was like one of the proudest moments of my life. Just to be able to like, make good on what you say you're gonna do. And my
Mm.
sister always hypes me up. She tells me, like, you ain't no secondhand store, you Neiman Marcus, you Von Moore. And so she always hyped me up. My mom is always telling me, like, you my son, it's a she always says it's like a biological impossibility for you not to be successful, you not to be doing your thing. And so you hear that enough, bro, it gets in your spirit and it just makes you want to go out there and conquer some things. But that day we went to Vegas, those 3-4 days we are in Vegas, man, like it was the best thing. And it kind of gave me a glimpse of like what I want for my future in my life. And I guess the last story I'll tell you is even before the Raiders job, when I got the Pacers job, uh, I got the call when I was at my grandma's house, and we were around a bunch of friends and family. I didn't tell all of them. I snuck and told my grandma, who's like my best friend as well, and she just looked. You know how grandmas are. I'm just proud of you, baby. You just keep on doing your thing, and keep God first. And
Yeah.
then when I got home to Romeoville, my family sitting around. They don't even know that I got the job offer, and I remember my dad was like going to take a nap or something, and I woke him up. I said, "Hey man, there's something going on with my car, man. I need you to come outside." He's a real big car dude, so he like fussing and putting his shoes on. I needed a reason for him to come downstairs, so the entire family's together. So he's fussing, he's putting on his shoes. He's like, "Man, this dude, man, didn't I tell you get your oil changed? You don't listen, Donnie, whatever." And then when he's putting on his shoes, I told him, I was like, "Hey," I said, "Pops, I got the job. I'm going to the NBA." And I ain't never seen, like I said, my dad is pretty like, he's pretty tough guy. He's a lot more open now than he used to be. Honestly, it's better for our relationship. But he's more, very masculine man, right? Likes to be in the macho man. Man, pops broke down. He just started running around the crib and was like, "Thank you, Jesus," crying. "Thank you, Jesus," walking around the crib, running. And he just kept saying, "My son's going to the NBA," and it was like something out of a movie. My sister
Mm.
ran and jumped in my arms. I'm like, "Girl, you grown? What you doing? Jumping in my arms like that?" Mama just jumping and screaming, her jaw on the floor. But those moments are like etched in my mind. Like, man, it means so much for them to see me succeed. And so, again, going back to the whole money thing, it's like there's opportunities to, do what you love, make money, be successful, live a certain lifestyle. You're always gonna have problems and things that pop up, but it's like this belief that okay, my parents did this and built it out like this. I'm gonna take that baton and give it to my kids. So hopefully, when they get out of school, they have no debt at all. They have. I can buy them a car. I can take them places, let them see things. And so, yeah, man, I just had this irrational belief, like, hey, speak that over your own life. If you think you're gonna be broke forever, that's not gonna be me. And so yeah, but it's always been fun, especially the last few years, to just be able to afford to do certain things. And I'm not a
Yeah.
materialistic person, but it's more about the experiences that I've been able to have with my family and share with them. And so, yeah, man, my pops, like seeing him grind every day. And the last thing I'll say is like, I got a lot of respect for people who are just consistent. I think sometimes people can look down on jobs that aren't as glamorous, or you only work 9 to 5, or you only do this manual labor job, or you ain't doing, but you show up every day and do the best you can as a man, as a woman. Like, I think that's one of the most honorable things you can do ever in life. I don't care what you do. If you make honest money and you show up every day to make it, like, you have my respect forever. Because I saw my dad do that and go a lot further than some people that tried to cut corners and skip steps. And so now it's like, again, they made the sacrifices for you. Take it and build it, whether it's monetarily, whether it's your faith, whether it's how you live, how you travel. Just take it and build it and make sure that your kids have better.
Love it. I love it, James. Winding down here, where can people find you on social media who want to keep a tab on not only your journey but also your coverage of the Colts for the Athletic?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at RomeoVille Kid, RomeoVillekid. It's pretty much the same on Instagram, on TikTok. Haven't posted on TikTok in a while, probably should. But yeah, like, follow me on anything, anywhere. It's all RomeoVille Kid. And like I said, it was a joke back then, and now it's kind of like my little name. And now every time somebody asks me, why is that your name? And now I get to tell them, and hopefully the goal is one day, people kind of know, okay, I don't know anything about Romeoville, but at least I know James is from there, and that's enough for
Yeah.
me.
Yep. That's great. Very last question for you, and I ask this of all my guests at the end, but what does Black success mean to you?
That's a good question. It means that I didn't ignore the sacrifices that it took for me to get here. I think that, one, being authentic matters. Sometimes speaking on issues matter. Using your voice and your platform matter, because I wouldn't be in this position, traveling the world, traveling the country, covering, in the grand scheme of things, meaningless football games or basketball games, if it wasn't for people on the front lines, like, actually fighting and advocating for us to even have education, to even have rights. And so,
Mhm.
when I think about, Black success, Black excellence, all those things, to me, it looks like you're taking what was given to you, and not only are you building on it, but you're reaching back as you climb to help that next person. Because it's not lost on me. One of the things I took great pride in when I worked in Northwest Indiana, my first ever high school job, out of college, I was covering high schools in Northwest Indiana. We call it the region. Gary, Indiana, Hammond, East Chicago. They got a lot of kids that look like me, and they
Mhm.
didn't always have reporters coming around to tell their stories. And so, one thing I'll always give them credit for, the trenches showed me love before anybody else did. And it's reminding those kids, going back to those places and being in the flesh and telling them, like, okay, you look just like me. Your hair nappy just like mine, or maybe some of y'all got waves. I got to work on mine. But whatever the case may be, you look like me. I talk like you. Listen to the same music as you. Came from the same places as you, or at least saw you in this environment, saw you in this light. And I'm telling you, it's possible. And so, to me, success is not only what it is for yourself, but it's what you can do for the next young Black woman or Black man that wants to do what you do, or do something, whatever they're passionate about, and do it well. Because one of the things I truly try to tell them is, like, whatever you're passionate about, like, go for it before you deny yourself. Like, don't deny yourself before somebody else do. Like, cool, if you chase this dream and somebody says, hey man, it's not your time, or you tried it and it didn't work, that's one thing. But just try. And so, it's to me, it's very selfless. It has to be. Otherwise, I think that you lose the essence of what this is, and you kind of lose sight of, we made progress, but there's always more progress to make. And I'm not gonna sell my soul to get it, but I'm definitely gonna be real, be authentic, and make sure that I'm speaking and talking and representing us, hopefully in the right light, where they know, like, I'm a real one.
Love it. Paying it forward. That's everything.
Yes, sir.
James, thank you so much for joining the show, and thank you all of you for tuning in, for supporting the show, for rocking with me, always supporting. As you all know, like, you can find the show on YouTube, which is where you're probably watching it right now, but I'm also on Spotify. And then in terms of clips of the episodes, You can find it on Instagram and TikTok. But yeah, until next week, I will see you guys soon. James, thank you so much, bro. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.